I'm honored to be called a dad. It's probably the greatest title that I could ever think of. I mean, the responsibilities of being a dad means so much. I love it now as my kids are older. I'll tell you a little bit about my boys in a minute. That sometimes they'll post on social media how proud they are of me as their dad, or how much they love me as a dad, and the Father's Day messages it just means so much. And sometimes I strongly believe our God, our Father, He takes that on just as much or more than we do as earthly fathers. And so, like I said, Betsy and I have been married for 28 years, and we knew early we wanted a family. And so I think if you really would got to the truth, we'd want a boy and a girl and be done. But we ended up with 4 boys, could never figure the girl thing out. The reason we have 4 boys is because we kept trying for the girl. But blessed beyond measure. And my oldest son is 24 years old. His name is Drew, and he is over in Edmond. He's been in Edmond about 3 years. He's living there. He's working full time, and he's 1 semester away from getting his accounting degree from UCO. So proud of him. He's been a blessing, and working full-time and going to school full-time, and has maintained a 4.0 grade average. He would always tell you that if you ask him, that he's a good student, but blessed, 24 years old. And then I have a 22-year-old that just graduated this summer, basically. His name is Gage. And Gage played football at Pitt State up in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He's been married for a couple years, and he outkicked his coverage big time. But the gal that he married, she's an accountant downtown at BKB accounting firm, and he just got hired here at Charles Page High School in Sand Springs as a defensive line coach and the freshman coach. So you'll probably get to know, if you're a Sand Springs fan, you'll get to know my son Gage. He's a rookie, so he's got a lot to learn. I told him it's going to be like drinking water out of a fire hydrant, just all the stuff that's going to come his way. But blessed, he is an exercise science major, and looking forward to working with Coach Klink at Sand Springs. So I'll support him the best I can in that endeavor. My next son is a 19-year-old, and he is playing college baseball at Seminole State Junior College, and pursuing that dream and chasing it. And he was one of those kids, just like many of you, he got impacted big time by COVID. How many of you guys are done with COVID? I mean, you're weary of COVID. I mean, are we wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? I don't know. I mean, I have a mask. I mean, my wife went back to work about 3 weeks ago. She works for CAPS Tulsa at the Skelly program, and it's been a tough go for them. I mean, they have kids that they're teaching and coming in, and some are masked, some are not, and all the staff is masked. But anyway, back to my kids, Matt, being a baseball player, was impacted. The baseball and softball kids, in my opinion, got impacted more, especially on the college level, because their seasons got cut short. They only played 10 or 12 games, and then the kids above them, the students are going to be able to maintain their eligibility. They're going to bring in this incoming freshman class or seniors, and so all of a sudden there's going to be a ton of these athletes that are going to be in these, in the colleges, especially, and the Major League Baseball draft wasn't as big, but and so there's just tons of college athletes that are waiting to see what we're going to do. So anyway, I got a kid doing that, and then my 17-year-old is going to be a senior this year at Broken Arrow High School. He is an orchestra cellist, and for those of you that don't know, you can be an all-stater in orchestra, and my son's a 2-year all-stater as a cellist, and so proud of him and love it, because I get to come home now and he's practicing his cello, working on a new piece, and I get to just sit in my living room and listen to the great cello player. I love it. It's been a great refreshment from all the other athletes that have been in our family. But the greatest responsibility that I have has been as a dad, and I need to ask you, is there anybody in the room or here that are parents, not just dads, but parents of all boys? Is there any all-boy families in here? Okay, so all-boy families are kind of a little bit different, and let me tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the weak of heart or weak in the knees. I mean, I tell myself every time, especially when my kids were younger, when that alarm goes off at 5:30, you better hit the ground, and your feet need to hit, and you're running from start to finish. And I jokingly have told my wife for years, I'm going to write a book I got to write a book on how to raise boys. I mean, I gotta share the wisdom that I've learned. And so I want to share some of the chapters that I've started to write. You know, the first chapter, chapter 1, if you open my book on how to raise boys, it's going to say, tile everything, okay? Tile and grout everything. That tile and grout are your friend, okay? Make sure that, I mean, if I had it all to do over again, our boys all have their rooms upstairs. We have a 2-story home. And once you come up to that last step on the second floor, if I had it all, I would start the tile right there. Tile, grout, the walls all the way up to the ceiling. You've been in those truck stop bathrooms and everything's just a tile. And that's what I would do with my second floor. It'd just be tile and grout. The minute you get up there, I think that about every 10 feet you could put a graded drain, and then in the side closet or in the hallway you could just put a power hose, right? Power hose with a reel, and you just unreel it, have the power nozzle on it, and splash some Clorox bleach out there, brush broom it, and then just hose it all down the drains. Okay, I mean that would be perfect. I'm telling you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to come to my house. Okay, I mean. For parents of boys, you start to rethink that the rule of no peeing in the backyard, okay? I mean, now it's like, it's mandatory. If you're going to pee, go in the backyard, all right? I mean, that's where I need you to go from now on. I mean, that you know. The second chapter would be what goes up must come down, okay? Boys are built with this mindset, DNA, that we're going to jump from the highest point that we can that will keep you and not get injured until it hurts, okay? We're going to go up as high as we can and jump out of this tree, and if we live, we're good, right? When I come home, they're trying to use my bed sheet as a parachute. They found a tarp one time. They're trying to build a hang glider to jump off the back play set, you know. One time I come home and my son, my third kid, Matt, he just had come through the door and he's holding his forearm and he's crying, and I said, well, dude, what's wrong? He's like, Gage and Drew, the older two brothers, they threw me out of the trampoline. And I'm like, what? I mean, we have a big trampoline. You got to have that with kids, right? We bought this trampoline. It's the best investment I've ever made. I probably need to write a trampoline chapter. But I always put the barrier, and I put the screen around it, the netting around it, and I lace it tight. You have to replace those about every 5 years. But Matt was holding his forearm. I said, what happened? He said, they knocked me out of the trampoline. I said, well, you can't that's like 10 feet tall. He said, no, they knocked me through the trampoline. I said, would you fall out the door? So I'm walking out while I'm talking to him, and Drew and Gage are standing there like, we didn't do anything, Dad. It wasn't us. And there's this perfect hole, really about the mid-level of the trampoline, where my kid went out they knocked him through the netting. They were playing this, they call this game like goal line stand. And Matt's always the running back, and so he's going to try to run and dive over the goal line and score. I mean, it's a great game. I mean, but they jacked him through the side wall of the netting of the trampoline, and unlucky him, he fell on our gas meters right there by the trampoline, hurt his forearm. The good thing was there's no stitches, there was no blood, no foul, right? And, we've oftentimes had the ER on our speed dial, and we're really good at stitches. We know when to put them or have them in and take them out and all that stuff. So, but what goes up must come down. The third chapter would be what goes down must come up, okay? Now, what I can tell you on this chapter, this is by experience, is if you don't know this, every Star Wars action figure from Chewbacca to little Yoda will fit inside your toilet, okay, and disappear completely, along with the Hot Wheels, the big tanker trucks, the long tanker trucks to the little green Corvette. They'll go down there too where you can't see them. Even a full-size Apple has disappeared into my toilet, and I can't find it, or we didn't know about it until one of the boys goes. It's always when they do number 2 and flush the toilet, and then it comes up, and that goes back to the first chapter, tiling everything, right? That would help at this point, and we're trying to find this app. I mean, I got so good at taking that toilet off. I take the whole toilet off the tank and everything off the back. I'm really good at it, and get the Roto-Rooter deal, and we're going to find out what's in this thing. I pull this apple out. Like, what? What have we got an apple in the toilet for? And Drew would tell me, well, Mom wanted me to eat that as my dessert, and I really didn't want it, so I shoved it down the toilet, okay? And I'm like, yeah, you guys, I mean, you can't do that. I mean, I'm taking this toilet off for the 15th time again. you know? So what goes down must come up, you know? So, you know, I can go on and on. You get good at repairing things at your house. My fourth chapter would be drywall and furniture repair. That's your side hustle. Okay, you're going to figure out how to fix things at your house, okay, because they're going to break it. Boys break stuff, right? I mean, I'm going to tell you, I have found perfect fist marks in through the drywall, but I've also found where elbows go through the drywall, the forehead, the cranium goes through the drywall. Even I've had a perfect picture of a rear end in my drywall. And you get good at repairing them. I mean, I know how to put that texture or that screen stuff up and kind of tape it on there, and then you put the drywall piece and how to texture the wall so it matches and paint it. I mean, and then the furniture repair. I mean, I'm really good at gluing legs back on our tables and our chairs and the ottoman, the little legs underneath it. I mean, boys break stuff, okay? And you know that saying that, you know, that's why we can't have nice things. That comes from parents of boys, okay? That's why we can't have, now you know why we can't have nice things. I mean, that comes from that parent, you know? And so, and from us, I mean, we have waited, we're almost empty nesters, but we've waited to put new flooring and new carpet and, you know, even buy new furniture because we're like, we got to get one more out of here and then we can reinvest in some things that'll be nice at our house, you know? So the next chapter would be, what's that smell? Okay, what's that smell? I mean, boys are stinky. I mean, they think that farting is an Olympic sport and that we're going to do this all the time. We're going to fart the alphabet, you know, or fart on command, you know, and it's crazy. They stink. And if you didn't know, you can order Febreze, the air stuff. I mean, you can order that in case lots. It'll come to your doorstep from Amazon with 9 bottles in it, whatever scent that you want to overcome the smell, okay? True story, when we finally broke down to buy a minivan, you know, with 4 boys, you're going to have something to tote them around. I had a Suburban, an old Suburban, early on, but Mom didn't think that was cool enough or easy enough to get in and out, and it was old, and so we're going to break down and buy a van. So we went shopping for a minivan, and we looked at all kinds of them. We looked at that Dodge Caravan and the Honda and the Toyota, and little known fact, but Kia, when they started making their minivan, they developed the Sedona, and in 2002 they added automatic back windows and side windows, and all the way to the back. And when my wife saw that feature, when they added that she was sold. She said, "That's the van that we're getting." In fact, the dealer, he hadn't even went through his whole spiel. She goes, "That's it. Write it up. This is the van we're buying." I'm like, "What's up?" She said, "That's perfect for the boys. They stink all the time. I'm just going to drive around." We drove around all our vacations, half our vacations, we had the windows down the whole time, you know. So, I mean, that was the selling point. Look it up. Anyway, I could go on and on. We could talk about grocery bills, and we could talk about all kinds of other subjects that I'm going to add to my book. But being a dad is a great blessing, a great reward. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with all of you today, I want us to focus on that relationship that God wants with us as our Heavenly Father, our Dad, that He has provided some truth and some promises in His Word that we can cling to. As we go through this uneasy environment, that we go through quarantine and all the things that we're dealing with, the thing that I've wanted to focus on the most is my relationship with God, and that I'm growing each and every day in the Word, and that I understand that He provides and protects, and His truth never wavers. He's going to stay with us from start to finish. He's got us. And so I want to look at a few things. I kind of wrote them as the 5 undeniable truths, or the 5 promises that God gives us as our Father. As we sing about His perfect ways and He's the good Father, I want to start with the very first truth is that we are adopted. As you look in the scriptures, Romans 8, 15, and 16, and you read this, I love this verse, and it's really where I want us to start today, is that it says this: "The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption." I highlighted adoption, to your sonship or daughtership. "And by Him we cry out to Him, Abba, Father." He is our Father. He's our provider. And that in the Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are indeed God's children. Man, how refreshing is that? That we are God's children. And I want to cling to that. I mean, God, thank you so much for adopting us. Thank you for allowing me to be your child. And that's where I want to start. And I know that maybe some of you didn't have a great example of an earthly father. I was blessed to have a great dad, and he loved us, and his love language was giving and making provision, made sure that we had everything that we needed. But some of you may not have that kind of dad here on earth. Maybe they abandoned you, or they abused you, neglected you, or something. But don't let that impact you and your relationship with your heavenly Father and his promises that he loves you and he wants you to be his child, and that he's adopted you through his Spirit. Let us focus on that today. And I just wanted to start there. The second truth, the second promise that I wanted to share with you this morning is he's approachable, that we can always approach our Father. And I love this verse. I stumbled on this verse when I was in college. I really wanted it to be one of our FCA camp themes, come to the Father, but no one ever voted for this one. But it says, Hebrews 4:16, let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and grace to help us in our time of need. And we are in such a time of need right now, but don't we need mercy and grace? Just crying out, God, give me mercy. God, give me grace. I need that. And that we can approach him in his throne of grace. I love it. That he's not hidden somewhere where we can't find him. That he's not on some high, lofty pedestal. But we can approach him each and every day whenever we need him. And he's like, come to me. Come unto me. And we're going to look at that verse next. But the second truth is that he's approachable. The third promise is that he loves us unconditionally. He loves us unconditionally. No matter where we are, what we've done, he loves us unconditionally. John 3:16, we know that by heart, that he gave his one and only Son to die for us as a sacrifice, that he loves us so much, loved the world so much. That was his gift. In John 6:37, it says, all those the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never drive away. And I think the word that captured my mind and that I gravitated to was never. I will never drive you away. And then in Hebrews 13:5, and I've used this in many, many illustrations, never will I leave you. He promises us, never will I leave you, and never will I forsake you. And I love it. Again, I gravitate to the word never, and we always hear in our world, our society, don't ever use the word never. Well, God uses it. And he uses it as a promise that never am I going to deny you. Never am I going to leave you. Never am I going to forsake you. I will never drive you away. And I love that about our Father. Unconditionally, he loves us. The third truth, the third promise is that he gives us rest. And Matthew 11:28 says this, come unto me, all you who are weary. And I know I'm weary. I'm weary in this time of COVID. I'm weary in this time of, our staff I've been on more Zoom calls than I ever thought about being on in my life. And I get off those Zoom calls an hour and a half, and I'm more weary. I'm more wore out than I would if we were sitting at a coffee shop or someplace meeting face to face. I don't know what it is about the technology, but it wears me out. It just makes me tired. But it says, come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle. I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Lord, give me rest. Lord, give us rest. Because you promise us. You promise us that you will give us rest. That your burden is not too heavy for us. And we cling to that. And the last promise is he calls us friends. And I love this. And if you've heard me share my testimony before, I talk about the word that resonated with me when my buddy shared how he became a Christian was that he had a friendship with God through his son, Jesus Christ. And the first time I ever heard that, it rang true to me that I need that friendship with God. I want that hand-in-hand relationship. In John 15:15, Jesus tells his disciples, he tells them, I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know what his master's business is. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. And I love that. I love it that he gives us that option as a friend. He calls us friends. And so those truths are what I have been clinging to for weeks on end, of our God being our Father. And I'll close with this illustration and this story, and it's somewhat long, but I want you to hear it because it rang true to me several years ago when this happened to me. When Betsy and I got married, the first couple that we started hanging out with they were strong believers, and they were a couple that we had met at the University of Tulsa. Both my wife and I went to the University of Tulsa in undergraduate and grad school. And my wife was in a sorority. She was a Kappa Kappa Gamma Kappa, and one of her best friends was a gal named Kate, and Kate was married to Stuart. And Kate and Stuart Bill became our closest friends early on in our marriage, and that we were in Bible study together and hung out together. And Stuart was from Midland, Odessa, Texas, and he was an oil and gas guy, and his dad sent him to the University of Tulsa to learn petroleum engineering and business management. And he went to work for Helmerich and Payne right here in Tulsa right after he graduated. And both Kate and Betsy, my wife, are from Arkansas. My wife's from Fayetteville, and Kate is from Little Rock. And they went to our wedding, and we attended their wedding, and we were close buddies. And Stuart and I loved to hunt and fish together. He was an outdoors guy, and a couple years into our friendship, he said, "Hey, I see that you really love to hunt and fish, and I got a proposition for you." He said, "My family owns a ranch down in Midland, Texas. It's called Calamity Creek, and my brothers, he's got three older brothers, he's the youngest. We have a fishing tournament down there on our ranch, and it's over Labor Day weekend. It's a 3-day tournament, but it's a big deal for our family, and we all get to invite one friend to come, and we fish as a team." And I said, "Sign me up. Where do I sign? Oh, let's go." And he said, "Well, I'd love for you and Betsy both can come. We want to just spend the weekend with you, and we'll fly you down there." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, meet us at the Tulsa airport and at the Millionaire hangar, and my dad's going to fly his jet up here." And so we got to get on this company jet and fly down to Midland and go to the Calamity Creek Ranch. And one thing about the ranch was it's out in the Chihuahuan Desert, somewhat, just the hill country, west of the hill country, and they don't have very much water, but the Calamity Creek runs right through the middle of the ranch, so all the water in the whole region goes through their ranch. Well, the Bills have spent a lot of money to dam up this river in 5 different places, and so they got these immaculate looking lakes. They stock them with Florida strain bass, and it is a fisherman's dream. And so Stuart invites me to come. So the cool thing, we get on this Learjet, and we fly down to the private airstrip on this ranch. I'm big time. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And they take us out there. They have a guest house for us, and the tournament begins. And Stuart tells me a couple things, but the one thing he tells me, he says, "I really want to win because my name's never been on the leaderboard or on the winners board at the ranch. I'm the youngest brother, and I've never been the winner." He says, "So I'm challenged. I brought you in as my ringer. You're my guy." I'm like, "Okay, no pressure." He said, let's if we win, there's great prizes. I mean, we're talking big gift certificates and tackle and rod and reel. And he said, "But the good thing is if we win, we always got to defend our championship, so you get to come back." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's a great motivation." So we do this, and so we end up winning. And long story short, we win, and he invites me back the next year, and so Betsy and I get to come back the next year. We win this second one, we win a third one. Like on the fourth one, I get a phone call. Now, that third year, he moved from Helmerich and Payne. His dad finally gave him enough clout to come back and work for him at the BTA Oil Company. So he moved back to Midland. So he wasn't here. But he said, he called me, he said, "Hey, we're still going to have the tournament. Bad news is we're not going to have it at Calamity Creek. We're going through a drought." They'd had a drought in West Texas. He said, our ponds are almost dried up. He said, "But Robert, my brother's buddy and his partner, they have a ranch in Fort Worth. It's pretty close to Tulsa." He said, "We're going to just keep the format going. We're going to do the tournament at this ranch south of Fort Worth." He said, "Could you make it?" And I said, "I think so." He said, "Well, the catch is you're going to have to drive down there and bring your boat because they don't have enough boats on the ranch for all the teams." I said, "No problem. It's 5 hours or so. I can get down there with my boat." He sent me a map in the mail. This was before smartphones and GPS, and he said, this is where you come. This is where the entrance is, south of Fort Worth, and be there by Friday on 5 o'clock. So I took off from Tulsa, hooked my boat up, and I drove down south to Dallas. And I don't know if if you've ever been to Dallas on Labor Day weekend on Friday afternoon, the traffic is horrible. Okay, and I'm towing the boat. I'm not very good at towing my boat at this time, but I'm dragging this boat behind me downtown Dallas. It was scary and awful, and I ended up being about an hour late. But I find the entrance to this Flat Top Ranch was the name of this ranch outside of Walnut Springs, Texas, and I drive into this huge entrance. I'm like, wow, this is some kind of place. I should have known, but I didn't. I just showed up. I was already an hour late, and I follow the map to this guest house where they tell me to go, and there's no one there. I'm the only guy there, and I kind of get out, and I don't, see anybody, hear anybody. There's like one other truck there, and I get out, and I'm kind of looking around, and all of a sudden this garage door opens, and this guy comes walking out, and he's in this one-piece like jumpsuit, that's zipped down about to his navel, and there's, chest hair hanging out, and he's got grease, and there's a rip in his coverall, and I'm like, he's got this tore up hat. I mean, his ball cap, it's all greasy. He's got an oil rag in his hand. I'm like, hello, and he's like, you must be the Oklahoma boy. I'm like, yeah, I'm the Oklahoma boy. And he's like, well, welcome to Flat Top Ranch. And I'm like, nice to meet you. And he's like, well, you made it down safely. He goes, all those other boys, well, you're going to get a hard time because you're the only Oklahoma kid here. And I'm like, great, and he said, all these other Texas guys, they couldn't wait for you any longer. They went down to this canyon lake on the other side of the ranch, and they couldn't wait. That you're so late. And I said, I know. And he said, hey, where's your bags? And he grabs my stuff, and he goes, let me let you. He goes, this is the best house on the ranch. He goes, this is the best guest house. It's got the hottest water and the best pressure and the best air conditioning. I'm like, well, good, that's great. And he goes, you won't need a boat on this lake. There's no way to get a boat down to it, but I'll drive you there. Hop in my truck. And so, he puts my stuff in my room. I get my fishing gear, and he rolls this old junky Ford pickup, about a 1977, I think is what I looked it up, and he pulls out, and it is dirty, it's beat up, the paint's faded. He rolls the window down on the passenger side and says, hey, you're gonna have to stick your hand in here on this side and open it up, because the outdoor, it doesn't work, that handle doesn't work. And so I get in, and the material on the seats are all tore up, it's covered with dirt. And I'm looking at this dude, I'm like, is this safe? Am I safe? So I jump in, he's like, come on, I'll take you down there. Now, the Flat Top Ranch, it's 16,000 acres. It's a 16,000 acre ranch, one-piece ranch, 25 square miles, okay? That's how big this place is. I didn't learn this until later, but it's part of the story. So this guy goes, come on, I'm gonna give you the nickel tour. And I'm like, all right, well, let's try to get to the lake as fast as we can. So he takes off on this ranch road, and here we go. So we go over this first little cattle guard, and we go to this second. We come around this big turn, kind of down on this grass flat, and there's these bison. There's these buffalo just walking across the road, and we're waiting. I'm like, you guys got buffalo here? He's like, oh yeah, we've had this herd of buffalo since like 1990, and this was one of their natural areas where they actually lived back in the 1800s, and we've reinstated them. And he'd tell me the whole history. And then we're passing these corrals and these other homes and these barns, and he's telling me history by history by history of everything. So we go to this next section, and these pronghorn antelope, they run across. I'm like, you got pronghorn here? Oh yeah, they're kind of a nuisance, but he tells me the whole story. The next section, no kidding, there's like 200 elk, and we got some monster elk on this thing, and they're just walking out there in this pasture, and yeah, we have a herd of elk here, and they got all kinds of crazy exotic animals, and turkeys, and white-tailed deer, everything. I mean, I'm thinking like Deuteronomy 8 type of, the promised land. I mean, milk and honey flowing, and there's all kinds of just great stuff. I mean, he's showing me, and this guy's talking and talking and talking. He shows me these water conservation pools where they've started to dam the water up and keep the erosion away. And he showed me some duck blinds, and then he gets to this place down in this valley. And I remember this because this is what he was so excited about, was the natural pecan trees. There's this whole orchard looking thing of pecans. And he wanted me to help him. He's like, hey, you can help me here. Let me show you this first one. He said, we're trying to graft these trees so they'll grow stronger and be more productive. And we're putting these, we're cutting the limbs and we're grafting them, and we're putting, these, I don't know, these other little branches in, and if they're growing, they'll have green leaves on them. So there's about 20 of them here. If you'll walk down there, and I'll just ride along in the car or in the truck, and if you'll just give me a thumbs up when you see green leaves. And so I'm walking, I'm like, dude, okay, so yeah, this one has green leaves. This one has green leaves. And he's fired up. He's like, yes. So I get back in, and he's like, man, that's been my baby. That's my project. I'm trying to get these pecan trees growing. And I'm like, well, cool. I said, let's go fishing, And I probably was kind of rude. Well, he drives me. We go all the way across this ranch, and it's like Jurassic Park, dude. I'm telling you, you just start that music and all these animals, and we get to this lake, and it's a canyon. It's down in this valley, and all the guys, you can see them all spread out there fishing. And we park, and he hollers down there, hey, I got this Oklahoma boy. And my buddy Stuart and the whole Beal family's there. And Stuart and his dad Barry start heading up this trail. And I can see immediately in Stuart's eyes that there's something going on. And he's looking, but he's not looking at me. He's looking at the guy that just drove me here. And he's like, just his eyes are wide open. He goes, Louis Beetrell? And he starts shaking, I'm walking out, hey dude, I made it, I'm finally here. And he don't care, he starts shaking this guy's hand. I'm like, this dude's the ranch hand. He told me he works here. and Stuart and Barry, the dad, walking, they're just having this small talk. And finally Stuart breaks free, and he kind of walks over to me and goes, you know who that is? I go, dude, no, it's the ranch guy. He kind of funny, and he needs to kind of zip that. And he's like, dude, that's the owner of this place. I go, that's Louis Beetrell. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, he's the president and founder of the Texas Oil and Gas Company. You know what that is? Texaco. You know who that is? And I'm like, no. He goes, he's the richest guy in Texas. And, he's the third richest guy in the world. In 1984, I looked this up, his net worth was $5 billion in 1984. And I'm riding around in this dirty old pickup truck with this dude. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And he goes, no, that's the dad. That's the owner. That's the guy. And I'm like, no way. Did I say something bad? Did I say something that's going to get me in trouble? I'm thinking through all the conversation. He showed me these pecan trees. What did I say about the pecan trees? And so, anyway, long story short, to wrap it up, we have a great weekend. And we had great fishing and great fellowship and great food. And Mr. Beetrell was there the whole time serving us and treating us. And I would sit with that guy. Every time I had a chance to sit down with him, he would tell me about the ranch. And he would tell me about how awesome this place is. And what I want to relate to you as I close is that I believe that that's exactly how God, our Father, is with us. He wants us to approach him and to get in the cab of that old pickup truck, and he wants to show us all the good things that he has for us, and he wants to teach you the greatness that is coming and show you that he's going to take care of you. I'm going to put you in the best mansion, the best house, the best water pressure. He wants to treat us just like Mr. Beetrell treated me. Louis passed away in 2011, and I didn't have a chance to go to his funeral, but I heard all about it, and they talked about what a phenomenal believer, how he prayed for his family. He prayed for the eyes of the needs, to have eyes for the needs of others. And you can look him up on the internet. It's amazing. But I rode around for about an hour with this guy. But that's how God wants us to be. Don't be worried. Don't be scared. Jump in here. I've got great things ahead for you. And I want to show you it all. And I want to show you how joyful I am in this relationship. And as I left that weekend, Mr. Beetrell gave me this book. It's called A Dream Come True, The Story of the Flat Top Ranch. And it's just the history of how he pieced that thing all back. It took him like 20-some years. It got broke up, and he pieced it back together in its natural, bought all the property around it, put it back together. And he wrote in the back of it, it says, "To Chris Kaiser, my best regards, your friend, Louis Beecherel." And I walked out to my truck, and Robert, the son, walked me out there, and he said, "Hey, my dad doesn't give that book to very many people." He goes, "In fact, I've never seen him sign it." He goes, "You must have made an impact." And I said, "Man, I just trying to be a friend." He goes, "Man, he thinks you're his friend." And that's how we need to be with our relationship with God, is that he wants to be our friend, that we're adopted, okay, that he's approachable. He wants to jump in his pickup, okay? He loves us unconditionally. He's going to give us rest. He's going to give us everything that we need. We just need to be his friend. And my hope and my prayer that each and every one of you understand that friendship and that relationship that you can have with him.
Hey, thanks for watching this sermon on the Hillspring YouTube page. If you enjoyed it, take just a second, hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss a single video. For more information about Hillspring, visit our website at hillspring.tv for times and location. We hope your faith was lifted and your life has been inspired with this message. Thanks again for watching.